Harrenhal ate sound the way a wolf ate bone. It held the echoes of screams in its stones, in the scorched hollows where towers had been melted and warped, in the dead hearths that never quite lost the smell of old smoke. Arya Stark moved through it like a shadow that had forgotten it was meant to be a girl, carrying a flagon too heavy for her arms and keeping her eyes lowered because eyes could be punished here. They called her Weasel, and she let them because names were armor when you had no steel. The wind worried at the red lions hanging from cracked battlements. Beneath them, men with hard hands and softer bellies laughed at the misery of others, sharpening knives for supper and for sport. A line of prisoners shuffled across the yard, wrists bound, shoulders bowed. The tickler's voice drifted from some dark archway, thin as a wire and just as cruel. Arya's fingers clenched until her nails bit her palms. She made herself unclench. Blood was a language in Harrenhal, and the castle understood it too well. At the center of the ruin, Tywin Lannister stood over a table littered with maps and stones. His armor was not always on him in these walls. He did not need it to command. He wore crimson and gold as though the colors were his skin, and his stillness made the bustling men around him look like frightened dogs. When he spoke, they hurried to agree. When he frowned, they found reasons to apologize. Arya poured wine for him and watched, listening the way hungry people listen to bread. "The Starks think to hold the Riverlands with mud and prayers," Tywin Lannister said, voice calm as a blade laid flat. "Prayers do not stop a charge." "They have the phrase," one man offered. "They have a bridge," Tywin Lannister corrected, and that was all it took for the man to wilt. Arya's eyes flicked, too quickly, to the little stones on the map. Lannister forces, scattered like seeds. Stark banners, black and gray, clustered along the Trident. Somewhere farther south, a city of 1,000,000 souls clung to its walls and its hunger, crowned by a boy king with a smile like a cut. Joffrey Baratheon, they called him, but Arya knew the truth of him, because she had seen him in the yard at Winterfell, seen him with a sword too light for his arm and cruelty too heavy for his heart. She remembered the way he had grinned as Micah bled, the way he had lied and let a butcher's boy die for it. She remembered her father kneeling at Baelor's September, and the crowd roaring, and Joffrey's voice like a child breaking a toy because he could. If Harrenhal ate sound, it also ate hope. Yet hope was a stubborn thing. It clung in Arya like a burr, pricking, refusing to be shaken loose. She carried the flagon away when Tywin Lannister dismissed her, and she did not look back at the map. She did not need to. She already knew where her hatred lived, and it did not fit on parchment. Down below, in a belly of stone that stank of piss and old rot, 3 men waited behind iron bars. Criminals, soldiers, deserters, whatever words were convenient to justify cages. One of them had hair the color of rust and eyes as calm as deep water. He had told her, in a voice that made even threats sound like prayers, that death was a gift. He had told her he owed her 3. Arya Stark had been counting her grief like coins. She was tired of being poor. The steps down were narrow and slick. Arya took them as if she belonged there, as if she had every right to be in the dark. That was the trick of surviving. Pretend you were meant to exist, and men might not notice you were only borrowing the air. The jailer did not question her. He was drunk enough that her smallness made her invisible. She carried a crust of bread in one hand and a cup of water in the other, and the smell of mold and iron made her throat tighten. The prisoners watched her with eyes like knives. Some whispered, some begged, most simply stared, hungry for anything that was not stone. Jaqen H'ghar did not beg. He waited. "A girl returns," he said softly when she stopped at his cell. His voice was gentle, almost amused, as if the dungeon were a tavern and the bars a joke. Arya slid the bread through. "I didn't come for that." "A man does not refuse bread," Jaqen H'ghar replied, and tore it in half without haste. He did not eat at once. He held it like a token. Arya swallowed. The dark pressed close, thick with the sound of distant screams and the clink of chains. Somewhere above, men laughed. Somewhere deeper, someone cried and then went quiet. It would have been easy to run. Running was what she had done for days, months, a lifetime that had started in Winterfell and ended in ashes. But she was done with running for a moment. "You said you owed me," she whispered. "A man has said," Jaqen H'ghar agreed. "A man is no thief. A debt is owed to the many-faced god, and the many-faced god is owed to a girl." Arya's stomach twisted at the words, at the way he spoke of death as though it were mercy. She wanted to hate him for that. She could not. Not when the men who hurt her laughed while they did it. Not when the ones who wore lions on their chests thought the world belonged to them. "How many?" Arya asked, though she knew. Three, Jaqen H'ghar said, and smiled without warmth. "Name them." She had named them in her head 1,000 times, a litany she recited to keep her from breaking. Names that tasted of blood and home. Names that had stolen her father, her brother, her world. Yet now that the moment was here, her tongue felt too big for her mouth, her courage too small. She pictured the tickler, the way his voice made grown men wet themselves. She pictured Ser Amory Lorch, slapping girls for sport. She pictured the guards who had kicked Gendry for daring to breathe. Little monsters, crawling on the skin of a greater beast. And then she saw Winterfell's yard again, saw Joffrey Baratheon's thin lips curling as he lied. She saw King's Landing steps, saw her father's head tumble. She saw her sister taken. She saw Cersei Lannister's pale face behind her golden hair, cool as polished marble, ordering death as if it were a plate brought to table. And she thought of Tywin Lannister, standing over maps in this cursed castle, deciding where thousands would die with a quiet voice, deciding that some lives were worth less because he said so. Arya leaned closer to the bars. The torchlight trembled. Jaqen H'ghar's eyes did not. "Joffrey Baratheon," she said. Jaqen H'ghar's smile faded. Not fear, never that, but a shift like a door closing somewhere deep inside. "A girl names a king." "He's not a king," Arya spat, and then caught herself because the dungeon listened. He's Joffrey. "A king all the same," Jaqen H'ghar murmured. "The many-faced god takes kings as he takes beggars. A man hears." Arya's heart hammered. She should have stopped there. She should have saved the other names for nearer, smaller evils that might be killed without shaking the world. But the world had already shaken, and it had not fallen in her favor. "Cersei Lannister," Arya said. A silence followed, thick as oil. Even the other prisoners seemed to hold their breath. "And the third?" Jaqen H'ghar asked. Arya did not hesitate now. The words came like an arrow loosed. "Tywin Lannister." For the first time, Jaqen H'ghar blinked. Once, slowly. His gaze stayed on her as if he were seeing her anew, not as a hungry little wolf but as something sharper. "A girl has a large hunger," he said at last. "A girl is starving," Arya whispered back. Jaqen H'ghar bowed his head, the motion so slight it might have been imagined. "Then the many-faced god will feed." That night, Harrenhal wore its curse like a crown. Rain slid down broken stone, pooling in cracks that smelled of old blood. Arya poured wine with hands that did not quite stop trembling, and she told herself it was only cold. Cold and fear. She did not tell herself it was power. Power was a dangerous word, and she had seen what it did to men. Tywin Lannister's hall was less a hall than a cavern of ruin made useful. Tapestries tried to hide scorched walls. Braziers tried to warm the air and only succeeded in making the smoke hang low and bitter. Men gathered around the table and pretended the castle's ghosts did not watch them. They spoke of Robb Stark as if he were a storm that must be measured, as if numbers could capture a boy king's fury. They spoke of Stannis Baratheon and Renly Baratheon, of brothers turning their teeth on each other. They spoke of supply lines and siege engines and the price of grain, as though bread mattered more than blood. Arya listened, and each name was a nail hammered into her memory. "They will come for the River Lords," Kevan Lannister said. Kevan's voice lacked the steel of his brothers, but it carried the weight of long obedience. "If we press, they will break." "If they break," Tywin Lannister answered, "they will break toward the north where winter is waiting. Let it. Hunger is my ally. I have fed men to wolves before." Ser Gregor Clegane did not speak. He rarely did unless it was to growl a command. Yet his presence filled the space like smoke. Arya could feel him even when she did not look at him. She had seen what he did to prisoners in the yard. She had heard the crunch of bone and the way men stopped making sounds. She wondered, briefly, if Jaqen H'ghar could kill a mountain. She wondered if the many-faced god bothered with monsters or simply let them rot. Tywin Lannister lifted his cup. His hand was steady, pale against gold. His eyes were pale too, colder than any winter Arya had known. He drank, and then he spoke as if he had tasted nothing at all. "We march at first light," he said. "I want scouts along the Green Fork. I want my outriders fed. I want no delays." The men murmured assent, as automatic as breath. Arya stepped forward to refill the cup. The silver flagon sloshed, and she forced her wrist to still. Tywin Lannister glanced at her, and she felt the weight of his gaze as keenly as a sword at her throat. "You're frightened," he observed, voice mild. Arya kept her eyes lowered. "It's the castle, my lord. They say it's cursed." "Curses are for those who believe in them," Tywin Lannister replied. "Do you believe in curses, girl?" Arya's mouth went dry. She thought of her mother's prayers, of her father's honor, of the Godswood at Winterfell. She thought of the Seven, and of a god with many faces who took lives as gifts. "I believe in hungry men," Arya said carefully, and heard the faintest hint of amusement in Tywin Lannister's breath, as if she had said something clever by accident. Tywin Lannister's gaze lingered. "You have a northern tongue." Arya's heart stuttered. "I was born near Maidenpool, my lord." "Were you?" he said, and the words made it clear he did not care. A truth only mattered if it served. He waved her away with 2 fingers. Arya moved back into the shadows, her lungs burning as if she had been running. The council resumed. The castle creaked. Somewhere in the belly of Harrenhal, a man who was no one waited for the moment when debt became action. Arya did not sleep. She lay on straw in a corner of a room she shared with other serving girls, and she stared into darkness until her eyes hurt. She kept hearing Jaqen H'ghar's voice. "The many-faced god will feed." She wondered who would be fed first. Near midnight, when the castle's noises had quieted into the soft groans of old stone and the distant murmurs of men dreaming of violence, Arya slipped outside. Harrenhal's Godswood was a twisted thing, more ruin than sanctuary. Trees grew where walls had fallen, roots drinking from soil fattened by centuries of death. The air smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves, and the moonlight made the pool at its heart look like a sheet of hammered silver. She had not meant to come here. Her feet had carried her, as if the Godswood could remember what home felt like and offer it back. In Winterfell, the Godswood had been deep and safe, with the heart tree watching over all. Here there was no heart tree, only shadows and the sense that something listened anyway. Jaqen H'ghar was waiting beside the pool. Arya stopped so suddenly she almost tripped. Her hand went to the small knife she did not truly know how to use. He did not move, did not raise a hand. He simply stood, damp hair curling at his temples, eyes reflecting the moon. "A girl is restless," he said. "A girl is not stupid," Arya whispered. "You said you heard me. I named them." "A man has heard," Jaqen H'ghar replied. "A man has promised. Promises are iron." Arya stared at him, trying to find some crack. Fear, anger, doubt. She found none. It was like staring into a well. "How?" she demanded, because if she understood the how, she could understand the risk, and if she understood the risk, she might breathe again. "How can you kill them? One is in King's Landing. One is, he's here but he has guards. And the other, a man does not ask how the many-faced god takes what is owed," Jaqen H'ghar said gently. "A girl asked for names. Names were given. A man will give death." Arya's stomach turned. "I didn't ask for..." She stopped, because that was a lie. She had asked. She had asked with every heartbeat that had screamed for vengeance. "When?" Jaqen H'ghar looked at the pool. A leaf floated on it, turning slowly, like a coin spinning on a table. "Soon," he said. A man must walk, and a man must wear faces. But the many-faced god is patient only when men are patient too. Arya's breath came fast. What if they move? What if Tywin Lannister leaves tomorrow? Jaqen H'ghar's mouth curved slightly. Then the many-faced god will meet him on the road. A man has met men on roads before. Arya wanted to feel triumphant. Instead, she felt sick, as if she had swallowed something alive. "What do you want?" she asked, because no one did anything without wanting something. Her father had wanted justice. Men like Tywin Lannister wanted power. Even kind people wanted warmth and bread. Jaqen H'ghar's eyes came back to her. "A man wants nothing," he said softly. "A man serves." "That's not true," Arya snapped, and her voice shook. "Everyone wants." Jaqen H'ghar stepped closer, silent on wet earth. He was not tall, but he made Arya feel small, as if she were standing before a door she did not know how to open. "A girl saved 3 lives," he murmured. "A girl pulled a man from fire. A debt is owed. A man pays his debts. That is all." Arya's throat tightened. She remembered the burning wagon, remembered the screams and the smell of hair singeing, remembered the way she had acted without thinking because something inside her had refused to watch men burn. She had done it because she could, because she was not yet so broken that she could ignore suffering. And now she was using that moment like a knife. "A girl is sorry," she said, and hated the weakness of the words. Jaqen H'ghar studied her for a long moment. "A girl feels," he said, almost approving. "That is why a girl will live." He reached into his sleeve and drew out nothing more than a small iron coin. He did not offer it yet. He held it between 2 fingers as if it were an eye. "When the debt is paid," he said, "a girl will be free, and a girl will choose what she becomes." Arya stared at the coin until her vision blurred. Free. The word felt like a story she had heard once, before the world turned. She did not take the coin. Not yet. The next day arrived with rain and orders. Men shouted. Horses screamed. Armor clanged. Harrenhal woke like a beast, shaking fleas from its coat, preparing to move. Arya ran errands with her head down, the way she always did. She filled cups. She carried messages she could not read. She scrubbed at stains that never truly left. Yet beneath the small tasks, something else moved. Something she could not see but could feel, like a storm rolling in before the first lightning strikes. Tywin Lannister's commanders came and went from his solar, faces pinched with urgency. Arya poured wine and listened to snatches of war. Talk of fords, of outriders, of the Frey's Bridge, of a wolf king who struck like a shadow and vanished. Tywin Lannister was not rattled. He spoke with the same calm, as if victory were a cloth he could fold and store. When Arya left the solar, she passed a corridor that led toward the cells. She did not look down it. She forced herself not to, because looking would make it real, and she was afraid of what real meant. By late afternoon, the rain eased. A pale, broken light fell through gaps in Harrenhal's roof, turning puddles to dull mirrors. Tywin Lannister dismissed his council and went alone to his chamber to write. Letters sealed with lion wax, sent out like commands that could not be refused. Arya did not see Jaqen H'ghar. Not once. She did not see a jailer unlock a cell. She did not see a guard slump as if sleep had taken him too suddenly. She saw none of it because whatever Jaqen H'ghar did, he did as ghosts did it, without announcement. Yet the castle watched. As dusk thickened, Arya carried a tray past the kitchens and heard 2 men arguing. One swore he had seen a serving girl with hair the color of rust slipping through a side passage. The other laughed and said there were 100 serving girls, all dirt and rags, all the same. The first man crossed himself with shaking fingers, muttering of Harrenhal's curse. Arya's skin prickled. She walked faster. When she reached the yard, she found Ser Gregor Clegane mounted and ready, helm on, horse stamping. The mountain looked toward Tywin Lannister's tower as if expecting a signal. Men around him adjusted straps, checked blades, spat in the mud. "Move!" One of them barked at Arya, and she jumped aside, tray clattering. The man cuffed her hard enough to make her teeth click. Watch where you walk, rat. Arya stared at the mud where her wine had spilled, red staining brown like fresh blood. She said nothing. She picked up the pieces with hands that did not shake this time. Because somewhere, in some shadowed corridor, a man was walking toward Tywin Lannister. And Arya could not stop it now even if she wanted to. She did not know whether she wanted to. Tywin Lannister wrote by candlelight, as if he could carve order into the world with ink. The chamber was one of the few in Harrenhal that did not openly mock those who lived in it. Tapestries softened scorched stone. A brazier burned clean. His desk was solid oak, brought with the army like everything else that mattered. Maps were stacked neatly at one side. Seals and wax and a small lion stamp sat arranged with a precision that left no room for chaos. Outside, the last of the rain tapped at the narrow window. It was a small, persistent sound, the kind that could drive men mad if they listened too long. Tywin Lannister did not listen. He heard only what was useful. He signed a letter, folded it, pressed wax to it, stamped it and set it aside. Another letter waited, another command. He reached for the quill again. The candle guttered, though there was no wind. Tywin Lannister frowned, irritation more than fear. He lifted his eyes toward the flame. In the glass of the window, a shape moved. He turned, fast for a man his age, hand already reaching for the dagger he kept within easy grasp. The room was empty. The shadows were deep, but they were always deep in Harrenhal. The candlelight made monsters of every corner. Tywin Lannister's mouth tightened, as if he were angry at the castle for daring to play at superstition. He returned to his letters. The candle steadied. He wrote again. The scratch of quill on parchment filled the space. Then his hand paused, not by choice but because something in his wrist stiffened. A faint numbness crept up his fingers, like cold seeping through gloves. Tywin Lannister stared at his hand as if it had betrayed him. He flexed his fingers. The numbness did not leave. He reached for the wine, perhaps to soothe irritation with habit. The cup was cool against his lips. The first swallow went down. The second did not. His throat constricted, sudden and tight, as if an invisible hand had grabbed him. Tywin Lannister set the cup down carefully, because even choking, he would not spill. He rose. His chair scraped. He took a step toward the door. The world tilted. Pain bloomed in his chest, sharp and shocking, then spread like fire beneath skin. His breath came in shallow, ugly gasps. Tywin Lannister's eyes widened. Not in panic, not yet, but in disbelief. He was Tywin Lannister. Men did not do this to him. Life did not do this to him. His knees hit the stone floor. He caught himself on the edge of the desk, fingers clenching hard enough to whiten. He tried to shout. No sound came. His throat was a closed gate. In the corner, where candlelight did not quite reach, a figure stood. Only for an instant. Only as long as it took for Tywin Lannister's gaze to find it. A man's face, calm, almost kind, watched him die. Tywin Lannister's lips moved, trying to form a name, a command, a curse. He managed only a wet rasp. Then his eyes went distant, as if he were looking beyond Harrenhal's walls, beyond the war, beyond the lions and the wolves and the foolish boys who thought crowns made them kings. His fingers slipped from the desk. His body sagged. The candle burned on, indifferent. The figure in the corner was gone before Tywin Lannister's head struck the stone. They found him at dawn. Word moved through Harrenhal faster than any raven, faster than any shouted order. It started as a whisper from a servant who had gone to clear the chamber. It became a murmur among guards who did not want to be the first to admit what they had seen. It became a shouted denial. It became truth. Arya was in the yard when the first bell rang. An ugly sound, cracked by age. Men stopped what they were doing. Horses tossed their heads, sensing something wrong in the air. Kevan Lannister emerged from the tower with his face carved into stone. But his eyes were red-rimmed, and Arya knew then it was real. Behind him, 4 men carried a bundle wrapped in dark cloth. The shape beneath it was too still, too heavy. As they passed, the cloth shifted, and Arya saw a glimpse of pale hand, long fingers that had once pointed at maps and moved armies like game pieces. Tywin Lannister's hand dangled limp, as if the world had finally taken hold of him and refused to let go. A hush fell. Even men like Ser Gregor Clegane seemed to listen, as if waiting for someone to laugh and say it was a jest. No one laughed. Harrenhal did not allow laughter on mornings like this. Kevan Lannister spoke, voice carrying like a blade across the yard. "Lord Tywin is dead. Until we reach King's Landing, I command." Murmurs rose like flies. "How?" someone dared ask. Kevan Lannister's jaw tightened. "The Maester says it was his heart." Arya watched Ser Gregor Clegane turn his helmeted head slowly, as if tracking prey. She felt absurdly that he could smell lies. Not because Kevan Lannister lied about the Maester's words, perhaps the Maester truly did believe it, but because Ser Gregor Clegane was too simple for comfort. He understood death. He understood violence. He understood when the world had shifted against him. A captain pushed through the crowd. "The prisoners," he barked. "Check the cells. Check every cell." Men rushed. Boots splashed. Orders collided. Arya's stomach churned. She forced her face into a mask of blank fear, the fear expected of a serving rat in a castle of lions. Inside, something else beat against her ribs, frantic and sharp. She did this, a voice whispered. She did this, but it had not been her hand. She had not poured the poison, had not slipped through shadows. She had only named, yet naming felt like striking. Words were supposed to be harmless. Her father had used words like vows, like shields. Tywin Lannister had used words like chains. Arya had used words like knives. Men surged toward the tower. Some crossed themselves. Others spat, as if to ward off a curse. Harrenhal's ruin seemed to lean closer, eager to listen. By midday, the camp was in uproar. Some shouted that Robb Stark had sent an assassin. Some blamed Stannis Baratheon, muttering of shadow magic in the night. Some blamed Harrenhal itself, insisting the castle had finally claimed the lion who dared sleep within its jaws. No one, not even the most frightened, spoke the name Jaqen H'ghar. Arya did not either. She kept carrying water. She kept scrubbing floors. She kept being small. But when she passed the corridor that led to the cells, she heard the sounds of men swearing, heard the slam of empty doors, heard the panicked cry, "He's gone!" Her knees almost buckled. She caught herself on the wall, fingers digging into wet stone until pain steadied her. Gone. One name paid. 2 remained. Later, Arya climbed. She did not know why. Perhaps she needed air that did not stink of men and blood. Perhaps she needed to see the world from above, to remind herself Harrenhal was only a place, not the whole of existence. Or perhaps she needed to stand somewhere no one could touch her and admit, even for a heartbeat, that she was terrified. The parapet was slick with old rain. Wind dragged at her hair and made her eyes water. She looked down at the yard where men ran, orders shouted, wagons rearranged. The Lannister camp had become a disturbed nest. In the center, a pyre smoked, sending a thin gray line into the sky. They burned refuse there, mostly, but Arya could not stop imagining Tywin Lannister's body somewhere inside the smoke, dissolving into ash as all men did. She had wanted him dead. She had wanted it with a purity that frightened her now that it had been granted. Her father's face came to her, as it did too often. Eddard Stark with his sad eyes and steady voice, telling her that the man who passed the sentence should swing the sword. He had meant it as a lesson in responsibility, in the weight of life and death. Arya had taken the lesson and twisted it. She had passed a sentence without swinging anything. She thought of the butcher's boy, of Micah running, of the way the world had not cared. She thought of the sept, of the sword ice coming down, of a crowd cheering like it was a feast. If the world did not care, why should she? Yet she did care. That was the problem. A gust shoved at her, and she gripped the stone. Below, Ser Gregor Clegane mounted his horse and rode out with a handful of men, perhaps to hunt an assassin who was no longer in Harrenhal. His violence would find someone. It always did. Arya wondered, sickly. How many would die because Tywin Lannister was dead? How many Lannister men would panic and slaughter peasants for comfort? How many river lords would see weakness and strike? How many opportunists would sharpen knives in the dark? Arya had not ended a war. She had cracked it open. Footsteps scraped behind her. She whirled, knife half drawn, and found Jaqen H'ghar standing a few paces away as if he had been there all along. His face was not the face she remembered. The hair was darker, the nose slightly different. Yet the eyes were the same calm water, and she knew him as surely as she knew her own fear. Arya's throat closed. "You! A man is gone," he said softly. "A man is returned." She stared. "Tywin Lannister. The many-faced god has taken what is owed," Jaqen H'ghar replied. There was no pride in it, only fact. Arya's hands shook. "The other two." Jaqen H'ghar looked out over the yard, over the scrambling lions, over the smoking pyre. "A king in King's Landing," he murmured. "A queen in King's Landing. The road is long, but a man walks." Arya's breath hammered. "How do you get there?" Arya demanded, because if she understood, maybe she could breathe. "They're looking for you."
Ser Gregor Clegane.
"A man has walked through armies," Jaqen H'ghar said, almost kindly. "A man has walked through fire." He turned his gaze back to her. "A girl trembles." Arya's jaw clenched. "A girl is not afraid." Jaqen H'ghar's mouth curved. "A girl is brave," he said. "Bravery and fear are sisters." Arya swallowed hard. "What happens now?" Jaqen H'ghar reached into his sleeve. The iron coin gleamed dull in the gray light. He held it out. "When the last debt is paid," he said, "a girl may take, a girl may go." "And if I don't?" Arya asked, voice small despite herself. Jaqen H'ghar's eyes did not change. "Then a girl stays as she is," he replied. "Small, hungry, surviving." Arya stared at the coin and felt the world tilt again. Not with death this time, but with possibility. They met again in the Godswood, because some places demanded honesty even from liars. Night made Harrenhal's ruin into something almost beautiful. The broken towers became silhouettes against a starless sky. The pool in the Godswood held a slice of moon, pale and sharp. Arya stood at the edge, hands clenched inside her sleeves, and waited. Jaqen H'ghar arrived without sound. This time his face was the face she knew. Rust hair, sharp cheekbones, eyes that had watched her with calm interest since she had first seen him in chains. He looked less like a prisoner now and more like what he truly was. A blade that could wear flesh. "A girl has seen a lion fall," he said. Arya's throat tightened. "I didn't see him fall. I only..." She stopped. "Only named. Only spoke. Only wished. Only had changed the world." "The many-faced god counts all," Jaqen H'ghar murmured. "A girl did not strike, but a girl asked." Asking is a kind of striking. Arya hated that he understood her so well. "Will it be clean?" she whispered, and surprised herself with the question. She did not mean clean like bloodless. Nothing in Westeros was bloodless. She meant clean like certain, like done. Jaqen H'ghar studied the moon's reflection. "A king breathes today," he said. "A king will not breathe one day soon. A queen breathes today. A queen will not breathe one day soon. A man cannot promise the hour, but a man promises the end." Arya's nails bit into her palms again. "And then you leave." "A man leaves," Jaqen H'ghar agreed. Arya's voice came out rough. "You could help me. I could..." She did not know what she could. Return to her family? Find Robb Stark? Save Sansa? The list of wants in her chest was endless. A hunger that would never truly be fed. "You could kill more." Jaqen H'ghar's gaze remained calm and unmoved. "A girl has had 3, he reminded her, not unkindly. "A girl could pay," Arya insisted, desperate, like a child trying to buy a miracle with stones. "Gold, silver, anything." "A girl has nothing," Jaqen H'ghar said, simple as truth. Arya's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing tears. Tears were for those who had time. She did not have time.
Jaqen H'ghar stepped closer.
He held out the iron coin again, resting on his palm like an eye that could not blink. "When the debt is finished," he said, "a girl may take this. A girl may whisper a word in Bravos, and doors will open." Arya stared at the coin. Bravos. The name sounded like water and faraway ships. It sounded like a story Sirio Farrell might have told her, with his laughing eyes and his wooden sword. The first sword of Bravos. The man who had taught her to dance. She did not want stories. She wanted home. "Why are you telling me?" she asked, suspicious even in grief. "If you leave, why do you care?" Jaqen H'ghar's eyes softened, just a fraction. "A man does not care," he said, and then, as if correcting himself, "A man remembers debts. A girl saved a man from fire.
A man paye.
And a man offers a path." Arya's hand hovered over the coin. Her fingers trembled. She thought of Joffrey Baratheon in his crown. She thought of Cersei Lannister with her cold smile. She thought of the way the world had been shaped by people who thought themselves untouchable. She thought of Micah, of her father, of Winterfell's fallen towers. Arya Stark closed her fingers around the iron coin. It was colder than she expected. The chance came on a night when thunder rolled like a giant's laughter across the sky. Harrenhal's men drank hard to drown the unease that had settled over them. Tywin Lannister's death had left a hollow in the camp, a silence where certainty had lived. Kevan Lannister tried to fill it with orders, but orders were not the same as presence. The soldiers felt it. Fear moved among them, turning to anger, and anger always needed something to strike. Arya watched it building like storm clouds. She watched guards get sloppy, watched captains argue, watched men wander away from posts to find more wine. She found Gendry by the forge, hammering iron as if he could beat sense into the world. "We're leaving," she told him, low and fierce. Gendry's dark eyes narrowed. "We can't." "We can," Arya said. "Tonight." Hot Pie appeared from the shadows, clutching a sack as if it were a shield. His cheeks were wet, rain or fear, it was hard to tell. "They'll catch us," he whispered. "Not if you run," Arya snapped, and hated herself for the harshness. Because Hot Pie was only a boy, and she was only a girl, and the world did not care. They moved when the camp was loudest, when laughter and shouting covered the softest sounds. Arya led them through a side passage she had memorized in her errands, past a half-collapsed wall where ivy clung like fingers. The rain helped. It blurred footprints. It made torches hiss. It made men curse and blink water from their eyes. At the small gate, a guard should have stood. Arya knew it. She had seen him there a dozen times. Tonight, the spot was empty. Her breath caught. She glanced into the darkness beyond the gate and saw, for a heartbeat, a figure leaning in an archway some distance away, still watching. Not close enough to be sure, but Arya knew the stillness, knew the calm. Jaqen H'ghar did not wave. He did not call out. He simply existed there, like a shadow deciding whether to follow. Arya's heart hammered. She wanted to stop, to shout, to demand why, but shouts were how you died. "Go," she hissed. Gendry moved first, large and quiet for his size. Hot Pie stumbled after, nearly dropping his sack. Arya followed, slipping through the gate like water. Behind them, a shout rang out. Someone noticing, someone too late. "Hey!" Boots splashed in mud. Lanterns swung. Light cut through rain. Arya ran. The world narrowed to breath and pounding feet and the taste of wet air. She could hear Hot Pie sobbing as he ran. She could hear Gendry's steady strides. She could hear the pursuit swelling, men yelling, dogs barking somewhere distant. They plunged into the trees beyond Harrenhal, branches whipping their faces, undergrowth grabbing at their legs. Arya did not look back. Looking back was how you fell. Only when the shouts faded into the storm did they stop, panting, soaked through, trembling with exhaustion. Hot Pie collapsed against a tree, gasping like a fish. Gendry leaned on his knees, rain dripping from his hair. Arya stood straight, forcing her lungs to obey. She reached into her sleeve and felt the iron coin there, cold against her skin. Behind them, far back where Harrenhal's broken towers stabbed at the sky, she imagined a man with rust-colored hair watching the rain and smiling without warmth. A man who would walk to King's Landing now, wearing faces, carrying death like a prayer. Tywin Lannister was gone. The world had shifted. Two names remained, waiting like wolves in the dark. The storm did not stop when they left Harrenhal behind. It followed them like a curse that had found new feet. Arya ran until her lungs felt flayed, until her legs became nothing but pain and stubbornness. Branches snagged her sleeves and slapped her face. Mud sucked at her shoes. The rain made the world into a blur of dark trunks and slick leaves and the thin, sick glow of lightning that came and went too quickly to be trusted. Gendry moved like a bull forced into a fox's hunt. Too big for silence, yet stubbornly determined not to stumble. Hot Pie was smaller and louder. Every breath out of him was a ragged sob he tried to swallow and could not. Arya did not blame him. Harrenhal had taught fear to the bones, and it was hard to unlearn once it had taken hold. When they finally stopped, it was because the forest thickened into bramble and the ground rose into a rocky shelf that offered the smallest kind of shelter. They crouched beneath a crooked overhang while water poured off the stone like a curtain. In the distance, faint and muffled by rain, a horn sounded once and then again, and Arya imagined men with lanterns moving like fireflies among the trees. Hot Pie covered his mouth with both hands to keep from making noise. His eyes were huge in the dimness. "They'll find us," he mouthed. "They won't," Arya whispered back, though she did not know if she believed it. Her fingers were numb from cold and from the way she had been clutching the iron coin inside her sleeve as if it could anchor her to something real. The metal pressed into her palm like a promise. Gendry leaned close enough that she could smell wet forge smoke on him even out here. "Where are we going?" he asked. He tried to sound steady, but his voice held the same thin edge as Hot Pie's. "North? Riverlands? You got a plan or just running?" Arya stared into the rain. Plans were for people who had maps and fathers and rooms with doors that locked. She had none of that. She had only directions carved into her by loss. "Riverrun," she said finally. The word tasted like a story her mother might have told her. A place with stone walls and Tully banners. A place where family still lived, if family still lived. "Robb Stark is there." Gendry's mouth tightened. He did not argue, but Arya saw the thought in his eyes. A long road through war, through soldiers and wolves and worse things. The Riverlands were broken. Everywhere was broken. Hot Pie's stomach growled loud enough to make all three freeze. He clapped a hand over it in shame as if it had betrayed them. Arya almost laughed. A sharp little sound that died in her throat because laughter did not belong to her anymore. Instead, she pulled the sack from Hot Pie's shoulder and opened it. A lump of bread, soggy but still bread. A wedge of cheese wrapped in cloth. A few onions that smelled like dirt. Survival stolen in handfuls. They ate like hunted things. They chewed fast and swallowed faster, always listening for the snap of branches, always tasting fear with the food. Arya's mind kept returning to Tywin Lannister's pale hand dangling from beneath the cloth, and to Jaqen H'ghar's calm eyes as if he had been watching Arya's heartbeat all along. Two names remained. Two lives that sat far away in a city of stone and gold and lies. The thought should have comforted her. Distance meant time. Instead, it made her skin prickle, because she could feel the chain she had yanked. It stretched toward King's Landing, and something at the other end was beginning to move. Arya did not sleep. She lay on straw in a corner of a room she shared with other serving girls, and she stared into darkness until her eyes hurt. She kept hearing Jaqen H'ghar's voice. "The many-faced god will feed." She wondered who would be fed first. When the rain eased into a sullen drizzle, they left the overhang. The forest smelled clean in the wake of the storm, washed of smoke and shit and blood for a little while. Arya led them through low ground where their footprints filled with water and disappeared. She tried to think like a hunter, like Syrio had taught her. Look, listen, feel. Every shadow might be a man. Every sound might be a blade. At dawn, they came upon a road. It was not a true road anymore, not in wartime. Ruts were filled with standing water. Wagon tracks cut through mud like scars. A broken cart lay tipped in a ditch, its wheel snapped. A dead horse had bloated nearby, flies thick on its eyes despite the cold. No one had bothered to drag it away. No one had the time or the tenderness. Hot Pie gagged and turned his head. Gendry stared at the carcass with the blank, grim look of someone who had seen too much death and had run out of surprise. Arya stepped around it and kept walking. The first time they saw a group of men on the road, Arya's hand went to her knife so fast she nearly cut herself. But the men were not soldiers. They were peasants, ragged, hollow-eyed, pushing a handcart piled with bedding and a squalling infant. The woman at the front looked at Arya and the boys with a fear that matched their own. "Keep your distance," the woman warned, voice hoarse. "We've got nothing." "We're not looking," Arya said, and it was true. She wanted nothing from them except to pass. They walked by without speaking again. Yet as they moved on, Arya felt the woman's gaze on her back like a brand, as if the woman had seen something in Arya's face, something too old for a child. By midday, they reached a stream and drank until their bellies hurt. Arya cupped water in her hands and watched it spill through her fingers. For a moment she imagined it was King's Landing's Blackwater rush, imagined boats and docks and a city that stank of people. She imagined Jaqen H'ghar stepping into that city the way he had stepped out of Harrenhal, without leaving a footprint anyone could follow. Arya rubbed her wet hands together and told herself she did not care. But the iron coin was cold against her skin, and she could not stop thinking of the many-faced god that had begun to answer her prayers. Jaqen H'ghar left Harrenhal the way a thought left a man's mind. Silently, without ceremony, and impossible to chase once it was gone. He took no trophies. He did not look back at the broken towers. The many-faced god did not require sentiment. A life had been owed. A life had been taken. The balance was not yet complete. Outside the castle, the world was wet and ruined and full of people who believed they mattered. Armies chewed through the land. Lords sent men to die for banners. Small folk prayed to gods that did not answer quickly enough. All of it was familiar in the way disease was familiar. Jaqen walked among them as no one. One day he wore the face of a peddler with cracked hands and a cart that rattled. The next he wore the face of a sullen stable boy with straw in his hair. The next he was a soldier with a dented helm and a story about being separated from his unit. Faces were doors. Each one opened something different. At a crossroads marked by a weathered wooden post, he stopped. For roads met there, muddy and churned. A pair of ravens perched on the sign and watched him with clever eyes. The air smelled of wet grass and smoke from some distant village that had not been lucky. A dead man lay slumped at the base of the post, throat cut clean, Lannister colors dark with rain. He had been stripped of anything worth taking, left as a warning or an inconvenience. No one had bothered to close his eyes. Jaqen knelt beside him and placed 2 fingers gently on the corpse's brow, a gesture that might have been blessing or apology. The dead did not care, but the living sometimes needed rituals to stay sane. Then Jaqen reached into a pouch and drew out a small thing that was not quite a mask and not quite a cloth. It was pale as skin. He held it to his face, and for a brief heartbeat his features blurred in the rain as if the world itself had forgotten what he looked like. When he lowered his hand, the man kneeling by the corpse was not the same man. The cheekbones were broader, the jaw heavier, the mouth set in a permanently dissatisfied line. Rust-colored hair became dark and lank. Even the posture changed, the weight settling differently, the shoulders squaring as if used to carrying armor. He rose and took the dead soldier's cloak, shaking it out and draping it over himself with practiced ease. He lifted the man's dented helm and placed it on his head. From a distance, he would be another Lannister straggler, another forgotten piece of an army that had lost its lion. A horse waited in the grass beyond the crossroads, black and patient. Jaqen approached it and murmured a sound too soft to be words. The horse flicked an ear and allowed him to mount. He rode south. The Riverlands gave way to fields that had been trampled into mud, to villages that had become shells. Smoke drifted from roofless cottages. Women with hollow eyes watched him from doorways like ghosts who had forgotten how to haunt properly. Children begged with hands that were too small for hunger. Soldiers, any banner, any color, took what they wanted because they could. Jaqen passed through it all like a shadow moving across water. He did not interfere. Interfering was how you became part of the story, and stories were dangerous. His task was not to save. His task was to settle what had been named. In the distance, as the days drew on, the air began to change. The smell of the sea drifted faintly on the wind. Roads became busier. More wagons moved toward the capital, carrying grain, carrying refugees, carrying whispers. Men spoke of Renly Baratheon dead and Stannis Baratheon gathering ships like a storm gathering clouds. They spoke of Tywin Lannister dead in Harrenhal, and the way that news had spread like wildfire through every campfire tale. The capital listened to rumors the way a starving man listened to cooking. As King's Landing grew nearer, the roads became lined with bodies. Not all of them were dead. Some sat in the mud with their backs against stones, too tired to move, too scared to go forward, too desperate to go back. Gold cloaks patrolled the approaches, rough hands searching carts for weapons, for stolen goods, for anything that might threaten a city already gnawing on its own fear. Jaqen joined a small cluster of men hoping to enter by the river gate. He kept his head lowered, muttered the right curses about the war, about hungry mouths, about taxes, about kings. The gold cloaks waved them through with bored contempt. Another day, another line of animals entering the pen. Beyond the gate, King's Landing rose like a sickness made stone. King's Landing smelled like too many lives pressed together. It hit Jaqen as soon as he passed under the gate. A sour stew of sweat, shit, fish, smoke, and fear. The city was swollen with refugees and soldiers and merchants pretending they were not afraid. The streets near the river gate were choked with carts and shouting men. Gold cloaks pushed people aside with the lazy cruelty of those who had been given small power and had decided it was a kind of godhood. Above it all, the Red Keep sat on Aegon's high hill like a crown jewel, bright against the gray sky. Its walls gleamed faintly when the sun broke through, and the towers stood clean and unscarred compared to the city beneath them. The rich lived above the stench. The poor lived in it. Jaqen moved through Flea Bottom as if he had always belonged there. He kept his shoulders hunched, his steps careful in the mud and refuse. He watched and listened, letting the city reveal its rhythms. A faceless man did not rush. Rushing was how you missed the hidden knife. In a narrow alley, two boys fought over a crust of bread, snarling like dogs. A man with a pockmarked face leaned against a wall and watched them with bored interest, hand on the hilt of a dagger. A whore called from a doorway, voice bright and dead-eyed. A beggar rattled a cup and spat curses when no coin came. The city did not care about any of them. Jaqen cared about none of them either, not in the way they might want. Compassion was a luxury. He carried something else, heavier than compassion, colder than hatred, purpose. He made his way toward the Blackwater, where the river stank of tar and fish and the city's waste. Ships bobbed at docks, their crews shouting, unloading sacks of grain under the watch of guards who looked like they might steal half of it before it reached the storerooms. Somewhere, beyond the mouth of the river, the sea waited, and with it, Stannis Baratheon's fleet, gathering like a clenched fist. Jaqen paused near a fishmonger's stall. He pretended to examine the slimy catch while his eyes flicked toward a group of men arguing nearby. Their voices were sharp, anxious. "They say Lord Tywin's dead," one muttered. "In Harrenhal, dropped like a rabbit." "That's just talk," another insisted, though his face was pale. "Lord Tywin don't die. He's made of iron." "Everything dies," the first man snapped. "Even lions." "My cousins with the gold cloaks," he said. "Pycelle's been summoned 3 times to the Red Keep this week. And the imp's running the council like a man whose feet are on fire." Jaqen's eyes narrowed slightly at the mention of the imp Tyrion Lannister, a name that carried weight in this city now, though the weight was not always respected. He filed it away. Names mattered. He bought a small fish and ate it as he walked, letting grease coat his fingers. It was not about hunger. It was about looking like someone who belonged. When night fell, King's Landing became even more alive. Torches flared in iron brackets. Tavern doors opened, spilling song and laughter that sounded forced. Men drank because it was easier than thinking about the sound of war's footsteps beyond the walls. The sound of the river carried faintly, and with it the imagined creak of ships. Jaqen found a small inn with a common room packed with soldiers, mostly Lannister men, their red cloaks damp and filthy. He took a seat in a corner and listened. They talked of a boy king who liked to make men kneel and beg before he killed them. They talked of the queen, proud and vicious, who smiled like a knife. They talked of the Hand, Tyrion Lannister, who had arrived with hill tribesmen and strange confidence, turning the Red Keep's halls into a nest of whispering plots. They talked of Stannis Baratheon's shadow and Renly Baratheon's corpse. They talked of wildfire, though they did not know its name, only that green fire was being moved in secret by men in the city's depths. Jaqen listened until he understood the shape of the game. Then he slept for a few hours with one eye half open and his hand on a small pouch beneath his cloak. Before dawn, he rose and became someone else. The Red Keep had its own smell, separate from the city below. Less rot, more polish, beeswax and stone dust and roasting meat. It was a smell of wealth that could not entirely hide the iron tang beneath. Power always left a metallic taste if you paid attention. Jaqen entered the castle as a servant. It was easier than it should have been. The Red Keep devoured people every day. Scullions and washerwomen and boys carrying coal, men hauling barrels of wine and sacks of flour. In a castle that fed thousands, a new face was just another mouth to order around. Jaqen had taken the face of a kitchen boy with acne scars and a nervous twitch. He kept his eyes down, moved quickly, and let the cooks slap him when they were in foul moods. Pain was irrelevant. It was only sensation. He learned the kitchens first because kitchens were arteries. Food went everywhere. Wine went everywhere. Every lord, every knight, every king eventually put something in his mouth. In Westeros, a blade was loud. A swallow could be silent. He watched the cooks argue over spices, watched scullions scrape grease from pans, watched servants fill flagons and stack cups. He watched the guards change shifts and noted who was lazy, who was proud, who could be bribed with a smile and who would only be bribed with fear. He listened to gossip as if it were scripture. "The queen's in one of her moods," a cook muttered, stirring a pot. "Smashed a goblet over a singer's head yesterday. Blood everywhere. She should smash the king," a scullion whispered back, earning himself a cuff. "He's the one that—" "Quiet," the cook hissed. "Walls have ears." Jaqen's hands moved steadily as he polished silver cups. He did not react. His face remained the face of a frightened boy. Inside, he was already walking through corridors that had not yet been crossed. Once, as he carried a tray toward a service passage, he saw a girl in blue being led by guards. She was taller than Arya Stark, older, with auburn hair braided carefully. Yet her eyes were the same northern gray, too clear for this place. Sansa Stark. She walked with her chin lifted, but her hands were clenched. A hostage dressed like a lady. A guard leaned close and murmured something that made her flinch. She did not respond. She kept walking, a songbird in a gilded cage. Jaqen watched her pass and felt nothing. Not pity, not cruelty. Only the faint awareness that the city's web held many threads, and killing a spider sometimes snapped more than one. Later, as the day grew louder, he caught a glimpse of the boy king. Joffrey Baratheon strode through a corridor with a pair of Kingsguard behind him. He wore crimson and gold, his hair bright as a new coin. He laughed at something a courtier said, and the laugh held no warmth. His eyes were light and sharp, like glass catching sun. A man carrying scrolls stumbled in his path. The man dropped his bundle and fell to his knees, babbling apologies. Joffrey Baratheon stopped and looked down at him as if considering a bug. Then he kicked the man in the ribs hard. The man gasped and curled, trying not to scream. Joffrey smiled. "Pick them up," he said, voice bored. "You're making a mess." The king's guard did not move. Courtiers pretended they had not seen. The man picked up the scrolls with shaking hands, tears streaking his face. Jaqen stood in the shadow of an archway, holding his tray. He watched the scene with the calm of a priest watching a sacrifice. He did not judge. The many-faced god did not judge, simply balanced. As Joffrey moved on, a woman followed close behind, Cersei Lannister, her gown rich and severe, her hair a golden helm. Her face was beautiful in the way a sword was beautiful, crafted, polished, made to cut. She laid a hand on Joffrey's shoulder as if he were hers alone, as if the throne itself were her child. Joffrey shrugged her touch off with an impatient little movement, and Cersei's mouth tightened. For a heartbeat, in that small flicker of expression, Jaqen saw something raw and human beneath the queen's mask. Fear, perhaps, or rage at the thought of losing control. Then it was gone. She smiled at a passing lord, and the smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Jaqen lowered his eyes and moved on. He had his names. He had his paths. Now he needed only the moment. Tyrion Lannister hated the small council chamber for the simple reason that it contained too many people who believed themselves clever. He sat at the head of the table with a cup of wine and the weight of a kingdom pressing on his shoulders like a joke gone stale. The chair felt too big, as if it had been built for a man who could stand tall without effort. Tyrion sprawled in it anyway, daring the room to mock him. Let them mock. A mocking man was easier to predict than a silent one. Varys lounged like a cat pretending to be harmless, soft hands folded, eyes bright with secrets. Peter Baelish smiled as if he had invented smiling. Grand Maester Pycelle blinked slowly, beard trembling with each breath, feigning frailty like a cloak that could be shrugged off when convenient. Cersei stood rather than sat. She refused the chair offered to her because sitting would have implied equality. Her gown was green today, the color of envy and wildfire, and her eyes were hard enough to chip stone. "We have received confirmation," Pycelle wheezed, pushing a parchment forward with shaking fingers. "That Lord Tywin Lannister has passed." The words were absurd even as they were spoken. Tywin Lannister did not pass. Tywin Lannister endured. He was a wall. Walls did not die in the night like common men. Cersei's hand slammed down on the table so sharply the wine in Tyrion's cup trembled. "Say it again." Pycelle flinched. "He is dead, your grace. Harrenhal. The maester there claims." "I don't care what some Riverlands goatfucker claims," Cersei snapped. Her voice shook, and that alone told Tyrion more than any raven. Cersei was frightened. She would never admit it, but fear made her dangerous in the way cornered animals were dangerous. Varys sighed softly. "A tragedy," he murmured. "Truly, Lord Tywin was a pillar of the realm." "A pillar," Tyrion echoed, lifting his cup. "And pillars fall when termites have done their work." Cersei's gaze slashed toward him. "Watch your tongue." Tyrion smiled, all teeth. "I've watched it my entire life. It doesn't make it any prettier." Peter Baelish chuckled, as if amused by a joke only he could hear. "This will complicate things," he said lightly. "The Tyrells were, shall we say, encouraged by Lord Tywin's confidence." "The Tyrells will do what is best for the Tyrells," Cersei hissed. "And what is best for the realm," Tyrion corrected, because someone had to pretend the realm mattered. "Which at the moment involves not losing kings landing to Stannis Baratheon." At the mention of Stannis, the room tightened. Even Varys's smile dimmed. "We have perhaps 2 weeks," Tyrion continued, forcing his voice into steadiness. "Maybe less. He's gathering ships at Dragonstone. When he comes, he'll come with fire." Cersei's nostrils flared. "My son will not be driven from his throne by my brother's lack. My father's death is not a lack." Tyrion cut in, and felt something cold twist in him at the word father. Grief was complicated. He had wanted Tywin dead in his own bitter moments. Now the wish tasted sour. "It is a fact. We deal with facts." Pycelle dabbed at his forehead. "We should send for Ser Kevan." Cersei's eyes flashed. "Kevan is a loyal hound. He will come when called." Varys tilted his head. "And until he arrives, my queen, there is the matter of command." Cersei's stare said, "I command." Tyrion's stare said, "Try." For a moment, the air between brother and sister crackled like tinder. Then the door opened and a servant entered to pour wine. A small, nervous boy, eyes down, hands steady as he tipped the flagon. Tyrion barely glanced at him. Servants were part of the furniture in castles like this, useful, unseen. The boy moved around the table, filling cups. When he reached Cersei, she did not look at him. Her attention was fixed on Tyrion as if he were the only threat in the room. The boy's hand did not shake. His face remained blank. He set the flagon down near the queen's elbow, and with a movement so subtle it could have been imagined, his fingers brushed the rim of her cup. Then he stepped away. Tyrion raised his own cup and took a long drink, as if wine could drown the taste of war. He did not see the servant's eyes for the briefest heartbeat as they lifted, calm and dark, taking the measure of him. Outside, bells rang for some minor ceremony, some meaningless prayer. In the distance, gulls cried above the Blackwater. The city held its breath. Somewhere within the Red Keep, Death began to walk toward a boy with a crown. Court was theater, and Joffrey Baratheon adored being the star. He sat the Iron Throne as if it were made for him, legs spread, crown tilted with careless arrogance. The jagged blades behind him made a halo of violence. He laughed too loudly at his own jokes, leaned forward too eagerly when men pleaded, and looked bored when they spoke of anything that was not blood. Below him, the hall was packed. Lords in fine cloth, knights in polished armor, petitioners in ragged wool. They all bowed, they all scraped, because the throne demanded it and because fear was a language everyone in King's Landing spoke fluently. Tyrion stood off to one side with Bronn behind him, watching the spectacle with a sour expression. He had tried to keep Joffrey from holding court today. Cersei had insisted. She insisted on many things lately, as if insisting could hold the world together. "A man stole bread," a petitioner whimpered, pushed forward by guards. The man's hands were bound, his face bruised. "Your Grace, my children, bread," Joffrey repeated, as if the word itself offended him. "Stealing is stealing. Should we let all the rats take what they please? Should we invite them to dine in the Red Keep?" Some courtiers laughed too quickly. The man sobbed, "Please, Your Grace." Joffrey's eyes glittered. "Ser Island," he called, voice bright with delight. "He stole bread. Cut off his hands. Let him steal with stumps." A hush fell. Even those who enjoyed cruelty enjoyed it more when it happened to someone else far away. Cersei smiled, faint and proud, as if her son's brutality were proof of strength. Yet her fingers were tight on the edge of her sleeve, knuckles white. Tyrion noticed, and the noticing lodged in him like a thorn. A servant approached with a tray of goblets, moving carefully through the crowd. A slim man in plain livery, head bowed, steps measured. He reached the dais and knelt, lifting a silver goblet toward the king. Joffrey snatched it without looking and took a swallow. He made a face. "Warm," he complained, as if the servant had personally offended him with heat. He took another swallow anyway, because being king meant never denying yourself. The servant remained kneeling, still as stone. Joffrey began to speak again, some cutting remark to a lord who had offered advice, when his voice faltered. Just a flicker, like a candle catching a draft. He frowned and swallowed hard. Cersei's head snapped toward him. "Joffrey!" Joffrey waved her off, irritated. "I'm fine." He lifted the goblet and drank again, deeper this time, as if to prove his own invincibility. The proof turned to ash in his mouth. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face so quickly it was like watching wax melt. He coughed once, sharp and wet, and the sound echoed in the hall like a hammer on iron. Another cough followed, then another, each one worse. The goblet slipped from his hand and struck the stone, wine splashing like spilled blood. Joffrey clutched at his throat. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Court watched, uncertain whether this was some new cruelty, some jest at a man's expense. Then Joffrey's face twisted in real panic, and panic was contagious. He tried to breathe. His chest heaved. No air came. A high, strangled sound clawed its way out of him. Cersei surged forward, grabbing him by the shoulders. "Help him!" she screamed, voice cracking. "Help my son!" The Kingsguard stepped in, confused and suddenly human. Ser Meryn Trant reached as if to steady the king. Ser Boros Blunt looked helpless. Ser Aerys Oakheart's hand went to his sword as if he could cut sickness. Tyrion moved without thinking, pushing forward through the first ring of courtiers. He saw Joffrey's lips going blue, saw spit and froth at the corner of his mouth, saw terror in eyes that had never truly believed fear belonged to him. Pycelle tottered up, hands shaking, babbling about potions and leeches. Varys's face was pale, his eyes wide with calculations. Littlefinger watched with a strange stillness, as if memorizing the shape of the moment. Joffrey gagged, convulsing, then sagged against his mother's grip. Cersei held him tighter as if she could force life back into him with will alone. "Joffrey," she sobbed, and there was something raw in it, something that made even Tyrion flinch. "No, no." Joffrey's head lolled. His eyes stared past all of them toward nothing. The hall filled with screams. Some courtiers fled as if death were a visible thing that could be outrun. Others fell to their knees, praying loudly to gods that had not been invited. On the edge of the chaos, the servant who had offered the goblet rose smoothly and stepped back into the crowd. No one noticed him. No one looked at the plain livery in a room full of silk and terror. No one saw the calm in his eyes. By the time Cersei's wail became a wordless animal sound and the Kingsguard began barking orders, the servant was gone. In the throne room, the Iron Throne loomed over a dead boy, and the kingdom's heart stumbled. The city learned quickly when the crown's head had been cut away. News poured down from the Red Keep like sewage, fast, unstoppable, fouling everything it touched. By the time the sun set, Flea Bottom was howling. By midnight, men were fighting in the streets over rumors. "The king's dead," someone shouted near a tavern. "Poisoned. Stannis did it." "No, the imp," another screamed. "The demon monkey killed him." A stone flew, a bottle shattered, a fist struck a jaw. Panic turned to violence as easily as breath turned to steam in cold air. Gold cloaks tried to clamp down, but gold cloaks were men, and men were frightened. They shoved crowds with spear hafts, cracked skulls, dragged people into alleys and left them bleeding. Order in King's Landing had always been an illusion. Now the illusion tore. Tyrion rode through the chaos with Bronn beside him, both of them cloaked against the night damp. Torches flared along the streets, turning rain-slick cobbles into red-black mirrors. Tyrion's horse skittered at sudden movement. He hated being on horseback in a city. It made him feel too tall, too exposed, too much like a target. "Clear the street," Bronn shouted, voice rough. His men pushed forward, shoving bodies aside. "Move or you'll get moved." Some obeyed, some spat, some reached for stones. Tyrion did not blame them. They were hungry, they were scared. And now their king was dead, and the gods only knew what would happen next. In the Red Keep above, Cersei's grief had become a siren. Tyrion could almost hear it through stone, the sound of a woman who had lost the one thing she believed could never be taken. He pictured her cradling Joffrey's corpse, eyes wild, and felt a cold twist in his gut. He had hated Joffrey. He had wanted to slap him since the day he'd met him. Yet watching a mother lose a child, even a monster child, made something in Tyrion recoil. "It wasn't me," Tyrion muttered, though no one had accused him aloud yet. Accusations were coming. In his family, they always came. At a crossroads, they found a crowd gathered around a man hanging from a lamppost, his feet dangling inches above the mud. Someone had shoved a crude crown made of straw onto his head. A sign hung around his neck, "King." The crowd laughed and threw rotten fruit, and Tyrion felt bile rise. "Cut him down," he ordered. A gold cloak hesitated. "But, my lord," Cut him down, Tyrion repeated, voice harder. Bronze men shoved through. They sliced the rope. The body thumped into the mud, dead already. The crowd booed, then scattered when steel flashed. Tyrion stared at the corpse and thought of Joffrey's face going blue. He thought of the Iron Throne towering behind a dead boy. He thought of Stannis Baratheon's fleet out on dark water, sails like teeth. They reached a small square where a sept stood, candles flickering behind its doors. People knelt outside in the rain, praying with desperate fervor, hands raised, faces streaked with water and tears. Tyrion watched them for a moment and wondered what it must be like to believe that someone listened. Behind him, Bronn leaned close. "Word is the Queen's losing her mind," he said quietly. "She's had half the castle searched. She's naming everyone she hates. That's a long list." Tyrion let out a bitter laugh that turned into a sigh. "She'll start with me." Bronn agreed, untroubled. "You're convenient." Convenient. Tyrion had been convenient his entire life. Convenient to mock. Convenient to blame. Convenient to hate. He turned his horse toward the Red Keep, because there was nowhere else to go. If he let Cersei take command now, she would lash out at shadows until the city burned, and Stannis would walk into the ashes with righteous fury. In the castle, the council would be gathering, Varys smoothing chaos into opportunity, Littlefinger smiling as he counted the ways to profit, Pycelle quivering like a worm. And somewhere, perhaps already wearing another face, the killer moved through the city as calmly as if he were strolling along a river. Tyrion did not know the name Jaqen H'ghar. He only knew the feeling in his bones. Something unseen had entered the game, something that did not fear lions or wolves or crowns. Cersei Lannister did not sleep. She sat in the chamber where they had laid Joffrey, candles burning down into wax puddles like melted bones. The body was on a table, covered with a cloth that could not hide the shape of a boy's face, the line of a jaw that had once been arrogant. Every so often Cersei reached out and smoothed the cloth as if soothing him. Her fingers trembled. Her nails were torn. Her hair, usually perfect, had come loose at the temples. Tommen hovered at the edge of the room, held close by a septa whose eyes darted like a frightened bird's. The boy's cheeks were wet. He did not understand death, not truly. Not until it sat in a room and made the air heavy. He only knew his mother's sound had changed. He only knew his brother would not wake. "Come here," Cersei rasped suddenly. The septa flinched, but guided Tommen forward. The boy approached like someone walking toward a cliff. Cersei cupped his face with both hands and stared into his eyes, searching for something she could hold on to. He looked so much like Jaime when he was small, so much like the idea of everything she had tried to build. "They will try to take you," she whispered, voice tight. "Do you understand me? They will try to take you from me. They will try to steal what is mine." Tommen's lip quivered. "Mother!" "Say nothing," Cersei snapped, then softened abruptly, almost frightening in the speed of it. No, I didn't mean..." She swallowed hard, as if even her words were traitors. "You are the king now." The word king seemed too big for the boy's thin shoulders. Tommen blinked, confused. "But Joffrey is..." Cersei's voice broke. She turned her head sharply as if she could not bear to look at the cloth. "Joffrey is with the gods." She did not believe it. Her eyes had always been too sharp for faith. The door opened. Tyrion entered with careful steps, as if approaching a wild animal that might bite. Behind him came Varys, soft and silent, and Ser Meryn Trant with his blank Kingsguard stare. Cersei's gaze snapped up. The grief on her face hardened into something else. Rage given a shape, rage that wanted a target. "You?" she hissed. Tyrion inclined his head slightly, the gesture both respectful and defiant. "Sister." Cersei rose so fast her chair scraped. "You killed him," Tommen gasped. The septa clamped a hand over his mouth. Tyrion's jaw tightened. "I did not." Cersei laughed, a harsh sound with no humor. "Of course you did. Who else? You've always hated him." "I hated his cruelty," Tyrion said, voice controlled. There's a difference. Cersei's eyes glittered. You would split hairs while my son lies dead? Tyrion's throat worked. He forced himself to look at the covered body and not flinch. We have no time for this. We have all the time in the world, Cersei snarled. To see you punished. Varys stepped forward with a small, soothing gesture. Your grace, he murmured, voice gentle. We must consider the city. The people are restless. Stannis Baratheon. Stannis? Cersei spat, as if the name itself were poison. Yes, Stannis. Perhaps it was him. Perhaps it was the Tyrells. Perhaps it was Sansa Stark. She listed names like a woman naming enemies in a dream. But it was you, Tyrion. I know it. I feel it. Tyrion looked at her, and for a moment the mask slipped. He saw not only his sister the queen, but his sister the child who had once clung to him in fear of their father's wrath. The girl who had learned to harden herself because softness was punished. He saw what loss had done to her and knew it would not make her kinder. You're going to tear this city apart hunting your own shadows, he said quietly. And when you do, Stannis will walk in and take what's left. Cersei's mouth curled. Then I'll burn him. Tyrion's eyes narrowed. With what? Cersei did not answer, and that silence was answer enough. Tyrion felt cold run down his spine. Wildfire. Madness. The line between them was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. Cersei stepped closer, close enough that Tyrion could smell wine and candle smoke on her breath. Her voice dropped to a whisper sharp as a blade. I will have you watched. I will have you chained. And if you try to run, I will cut you into pieces and feed you to the dogs. Do you understand me, little brother? Tyrion held her gaze and forced himself to smile. Perfectly. Cersei turned away, back to the table. She laid a hand on the cloth again, and her shoulders shook once violently, as if her grief tried to claw its way out. Then she straightened. Bring Tommen, she ordered the septa. He is not safe out there. None of us are safe. Varys's eyes flicked to Tyrion, a silent warning or a silent sympathy. It was hard to tell with Varys. Tyrion watched Cersei gather her remaining child to her like a treasure, and he understood something with a clarity that hurt. The deaths were not done. The city was trembling on the edge of something vast. Cersei did not know it yet, but a man who was no one had already begun walking toward her door. Cersei trusted almost no one, which was why the person who entered her chamber that night did not need her trust. Only her exhaustion. The Red Keep was quieter after midnight. The corridors still held guards, but their footsteps were slower, their eyes heavier. Grief and fear wore men down. Even queens could not command bodies to remain vigilant forever. Cersei's chamber was deeper within the castle, behind doors that were bolted and guarded. She had insisted on moving Tommen into the adjoining room, close enough that she could hear his breathing. She had dismissed most servants, keeping only those she believed loyal. Women who had served her for years, who knew how to keep their eyes lowered and their mouths shut. One of those women brought her a cup of warm drink, an herbal mixture meant to soothe nerves. Cersei had scoffed at it earlier, but now her hands shook too much to pretend she did not need something. She could not show weakness in the daylight. At night, weakness found her anyway. She sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection as if trying to remember what she had looked like before the world began stealing from her. Her hair had come loose, falling in golden waves that made her look younger and more vulnerable than she ever allowed. Shadows under her eyes deepened the sharpness of her beauty into something almost skeletal. Leave it, she snapped when the handmaid fussed too near, and then softened with irritation at herself. No. Stay. Her voice dropped. Did you hear anything? The handmaid shook her head, eyes lowered. No, your grace. Cersei stared at the cup. The scent was faintly sweet beneath bitter herbs. She lifted it and drank. The warmth slid down her throat like a promise. For a moment, she felt the smallest easing of tension, as if her muscles were remembering how to unclench. Then the warmth became something else. A tightness formed in her chest, subtle at first. She frowned, annoyed, Another trick of her body, another betrayal. She took another swallow, stubborn, refusing to let even her own nerves defeat her. The tightness sharpened, climbed upward, squeezing her breath. Cersei set the cup down too hard. The liquid sloshed. "What?" she began, but the word broke apart as her throat closed. She rose abruptly, chair scraping. She reached for the bell pull beside the bed, fingers clawing. Her hand missed, struck wood. Her breath came in harsh, shallow gasps that brought no relief. Her eyes widened, not with fear of death, not yet, but with fury at the audacity of it. "Not me," her expression said. "Not now, not after." Her knees buckled. She caught herself on the vanity, knocking combs and pins to the floor. The mirror reflected her face, contorted, eyes bulging with sudden panic. She tried to inhale and could not. She tried to scream and produced only a wet rasp. Behind her, the handmaid stood still. Cersei's gaze jerked toward her, and in that moment, in the candlelight, she saw something that froze her deeper than any poison. Calm. No shock, no fear, only a steady watchfulness, as if the handmaid were observing a lesson. The handmaid lifted her eyes. They were not the eyes of the woman Cersei had known. They were darker, deeper, as if they belonged to someone who had stood at the edge of death too often to flinch. Cersei's lips moved, trying to form a name, an accusation. Her fingers scrabbled for the bell pull again, desperate, frantic. She managed to grasp it and yank. The bell did not ring, or perhaps it did and no one heard, because the Red Keep was full of bells and screams, and the night swallowed sound the way Harrenhal did. Cersei collapsed to the floor, breath wheezing. She crawled an inch, too, dragging herself toward the bed where Tommen slept behind curtains, oblivious. Her hand reached out as if to touch him, as if to anchor herself to him. The handmaid stepped closer, silent as falling snow. A hand came down gently on Cersei's shoulder. Not a shove, not a strike, but a steadying touch that held her in place as her body betrayed her. Cersei's eyes locked on the handmaid's face, and the face seemed to shift in the candlelight, features subtly changing like a reflection in disturbed water. A hint of rust-colored hair, a sharper cheekbone, then something else again, too fast to grasp, too wrong. Cersei's mouth opened in a final attempt at sound. Only a thin, wet breath came out. Her eyes, still fierce even as life fled them, stared at the bed. Her fingers twitched once, reaching, then they went still. The handmaid stood over her for a long heartbeat. Then she moved to the table, lifted the cup, and poured what remained into a basin, washing it away like dirty water. She wiped the rim clean, set it back as if it had never been touched. In the adjoining room, Tommen sighed in his sleep and turned over. The handmaid slipped out of the chamber and closed the door softly behind her, leaving no trace except a queen's body cooling on the floor and a kingdom suddenly without its lioness. They found Cersei at dawn, and the Red Keep became a hive struck by fire. A serving girl screamed. Guards burst in with swords drawn as if steel could cut death away. Tommen was pulled from his bed half asleep, crying in confusion, clutching at the septa's sleeves. Men shouted orders that collided and dissolved. Someone ran for Pycelle. Someone ran for Tyrion. Someone ran for anyone who could pretend to understand. Tyrion arrived to the sight of his sister's body on the chamber floor, hair spread like a fallen crown, eyes staring at nothing. For a moment he stood utterly still, as if the world had become a painting and he had forgotten how to move inside it. He did not weep. Weeping required softness. Tyrion had learned long ago that softness was dangerous. Yet something in him went quiet, a place where anger had lived. Cersei had been cruel and sharp and often monstrous, but she had been his sister, part of his life's landscape. Now she was gone, and the emptiness left behind felt too large. Pycelle babbled about heart failure and shock and grief, about how tragedy could strike any house, about how the gods were testing the realm. Tyrion barely heard him. His eyes kept returning to the cup on the vanity, the basin with clear water, the room arranged too neatly for a sudden death. He smelled no sickness. He saw no struggle beyond the broken combs on the floor. Someone had been here. Someone had walked through the Red Keep's heart and taken a queen as easily as taking a breath. In the small council chamber, the morning light felt cold, as if the sun itself were wary. Tommen sat in a chair that swallowed him, a crown placed on his head that wobbled because it was meant for someone else. His small hands clutched the arms of the chair, knuckles white. He looked at Tyrion with wide eyes full of the most childish kind of fear. Please make it stop. Tyrion wanted to. For a heartbeat, he wanted to scoop the boy up and carry him away from this cursed city and all its blades. But wanting was not the same as doing. Tyrion's life had taught him that. Varys stood near the window, hands folded, face pale. His eyes flicked between Tommen and Tyrion and the door as if counting exits. Peter Baelish lounged against the table's edge, expression faintly sympathetic and faintly amused, as if the realm's collapse were an interesting game. Grand Maester Pycelle shook as he spoke, voice thick with horror. Both in such a short time. Your Grace, the gods can choke on it, Tyrion muttered. Pycelle flinched. Varys made a tiny sound that might have been agreement. Littlefinger's smile twitched. Outside, the Red Keep echoed with chaos. Kingsguard barked orders. Gold cloaks ran with helmets half-fastened. Bells began to toll, slow and heavy, sending the city below into another wave of panic. Tyrion leaned forward, palms on the table. He forced his mind to stop spinning and start calculating, because calculation was how you survived. Listen, he said, voice sharp enough to cut through Tommen's sobs. We do not fall apart. Not here. Not now. Stannis Baratheon is coming. At the name, Tommen's eyes widened further. Stannis? He whispered, as if it were a monster from a bedtime story. Yes, Tyrion said, softening his tone despite himself. A very unpleasant uncle. And he will take this city if we give him the chance. Varys stepped closer. The people are already whispering, he said quietly. They believe the gods have judged House Lannister. The people believe whatever makes their hunger feel meaningful, Tyrion snapped. What matters is whether our soldiers believe it. Littlefinger's eyes glittered. And whether the Tyrells believe it, he added. Tyrion's jaw clenched. Yes, them too. Gods help us. No one laughed. Tyrion looked at Tommen again. The boy's cheeks were streaked with tears. He tried to wipe them with his sleeve like a child, forgetting for a moment that he was supposed to be a king. He was not ready. He would never be ready. That was the cruelty of crowns. They demanded readiness from those least able to give it. Tyrion reached out and adjusted the crown slightly so it sat more steadily. Tommen flinched at the touch, then stared up at him with desperate hope. We keep you alive, Tyrion said softly, more promise than comfort. That is what we do now. We keep you alive. Varys watched him with a look that held 1,000 thoughts. Littlefinger watched with interest. Pycelle watched with trembling relief, as if Tyrion were a pillar he could cling to now that Tywin and Cersei were gone. Tyrion straightened. Somewhere in the city, bells kept tolling. Somewhere beyond the walls, the sea rolled, carrying sails and fire and judgment. Somewhere inside the Red Keep's endless corridors, a man who was no one walked away from the Queen's chamber with clean hands and a debt finished. In the Riverlands, far from all this, a small girl with a wolf's eyes carried an iron coin against her skin and did not yet understand the shape of what she had unleashed. But the realm did. The realm felt it in its bones. 2 lions had fallen. A cub wore a crown, and the war, instead of ending, opened its mouth wider.